Okay, Marie.
Welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting to discuss NPA 2023-0018.03. If you haven't done so already, please let us know who is here by typing your name in the chat box. If you're associated with an organization, if you could provide that as well, I will use this as the sign-in sheet. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone. And also, if you're joining online, please turn off your video to save bandwidth. This meeting is being recorded and will be publicly posted to the publicinput.com/neighborhood plan amendment cases website. So if you do not want your image viewed publicly, please turn off your camera. So as you know, this property is in the Brentwood Highland combined neighborhood planning area, the Brentwood area of the combined plan. Mark Walters will be the meeting facilitator tonight. My name is Marie Meredith. I'm the plan amendment case manager from the planning department. And Dana Moses is a zoning planner handling the associated zone case. She will not be attending the meeting tonight. But here's our contact information and email and phone numbers. And if you've got the community meeting notice in the mail, it had my phone number and contact information. The agenda tonight, I'll go over basic case information, guidelines of group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map, also called FLUN. After my presentation, the applicant's agent, David Hartman, will do a presentation, and then we will open the floor to Q&A. So basic case information, property addresses are 5514 Grover Avenue and 5515 Roosevelt Avenue. The zoning case has an additional address included in it, and it is 5506 Roosevelt. The project name is 5514 Grover and 5515 Roosevelt Avenue, and that is for the plan amendment case. The future land use map request is to change it from single family to multifamily residential. The associated zoning case number is C14-2023-0065. And on the property with the proposed FLUM change, the zoning request is to go from SF3 NP to MF6 NP. And with the zoning request, the other track is from MF4 NP to MF6. So SF3 is Family Residence District Neighborhood Plan, and MF4 NP is Family Residence Moderate High Density Neighborhood Plan. And the request is to go to MF6, which is Multifamily Residence Highest Density District Neighborhood Plan for a multifamily residential development. Property owner is, I'm sure I'm saying this correctly, Beyond, how do you say that, David? Bianchini, your Texas Limited
Yes.
Partner. Okay. And Laura A. and Stephen Barlerain are the property owners. The agent is David Hartman. And you'll be doing a presentation after. Guidelines for group discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. After the staff and applicant presentations, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting, and we will call out your last 4 digits of your phone numbers. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. The staff will open the floor to questions in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. We ask that if you have multiple questions, if you can limit them to the first round of just asking 2 questions, then we'll move on to the next person for 2 questions, and then we'll go back around to prevent people from sort of tying up the discussion. Similar questions will be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. Again, if you're having connection issues, please turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. And as always, we ask you to be respectful to each other during this meeting discussion. So how to participate? As I mentioned, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the public input /neighborhood plan limitations website. You can email or call me or Dave with any questions that you have. If you have written comments that you would like to be added to the staff case reports, you can email them to me and Dana. The case is scheduled for the August 8th Planning Commission hearing date. It was scheduled to keep it from expiring, but it will not be ready for public discussion on that date. It will be postponed to a later Planning Commission date to be determined. So this map shows the areas in blue that have city council approved neighborhood plans. Neighborhood plans have a document that have the vision and goals of the planning area. And most of the planning areas have a future land use map. And these colors on the future land use map represent the land uses. For example, on this property, the current land use, here, for the single family lot is yellow. And with the proposed zoning, the proposed future land use map change would be orange, which is multi-family. So for the plan amendment case, it's this one lot, 5514 Grover Avenue and 5515 Roosevelt. This Google map shows some of the same uses. You can see Highland High School to the west. Future land use map again shows the one single family lot proposed for multi-family land use. Current zoning on that lot is SF3. So this is the future land use map showing the zoning request. And as you see, this tract already has multifamily land use, so it is not proposed to be changed or a plumb change because it already has multifamily. But as you see, the larger tract that has a multifamily land use has a zoning amendment 4. And along with the SF3 is proposed for the MF6 zone. This is the growth concept map from the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And these colors represent regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers. And then activity corridors are shown on the next map in white with brown linear lines. And so you see the property is not within a activity center. It's south of Crestview Station. You can see that to the far right of the screen. It is right in between North Lamar Boulevard, which is an Imagine Austin activity corridor. And to the left of the screen, you see Brentwood Road, which is also an Imagine Austin activity. This map shows the property with the surrounding transit facilities. You can see along West Canyon Lane, along North Lamar, Brentwood Road, and some Woodrow has some bus routes as well. That ends my presentation. David can start this.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for taking time out. I really appreciate it. I know everybody has many demands on their time. My name is Mari. Could you confirm you see the
Yes,
PowerPoint?
we can see it.
My name is David Hartman, and I'm a land use attorney for the applicant. And I've been doing this for about 24 years or so in a wide variety of neighborhoods, pretty much all over the city of Austin. And in particular, have worked on projects in this particular neighborhood and have in the past enjoyed a positive, collaborative working relationship with the neighborhood association. And I'm optimistic that we can continue that relationship for this zoning case. I have representatives of the ownership are on the phone as well if we wind up having questions for them later on down the road. But this meeting, as you know, is just really the first public step in terms of the process that we're going to undergo. And I think of this meeting as kind of the start of a dialogue that's going to continue over the next number of months. As Maureen mentioned, this case is scheduled for the August 8th Planning Commission meeting just to keep the application from expiring. But it'll go to Planning Commission probably a month or two after that, and then they typically go to City Council a month or two after that. And there can be 3 different readings for those City Council meetings. So I'd say this zoning case will be complete sometime in the first quarter of next year. So we've got quite a bit of public opportunity to gather input and continue this dialogue that we're starting today. Maureen's presentation is always so thorough, but I'll go ahead and repeat some of the information that we've got a little over 2 acres on 3 lots at these addresses. And the multifamily project was constructed in the 60s and the houses in the 50s. And that's really part of the genesis of this zoning case, is that these structures are basically at the end of their useful lives for the most part. And we can talk about that some more if you want. But basically, they're zoned MF4 and SF3, shown as multifamily and single family. The adjacent zoning includes MF6, which is what we're seeking, MF3 and SF. The adjacent uses are the McCallum High School, and not just the high school, but actually the baseball fields, multifamily, townhome and single family, and condo and single family. And this chart just kind of shows our applications of going to MF6 on the zoning case, and then multifamily in the future land use map. And we're proposing development of approximately 195 multifamily units. Obviously, as everybody knows, there's an existing multifamily project on the 1 lot at 5506 Grover Avenue, and we've already reached out to the tenants when we filed the application. We've already met with them earlier this month, and as part of our kind of what we're planning with respect to the tenants are to offer them all a right to return. Some other things that you see are typical in multifamily zoning cases that involved existing structures like this one. So it's pretty similar to that, and we'll continue that dialogue with the neighborhood, with the tenants as we go through Planning Commission and City Council as well. Maureen showed the aerial, and this is just kind of a zoomed in showing again the baseball fields, multifamily. This is condominium, single family, and then Houston Street, Roosevelt, and Grover are the street names that y'all are familiar with, I'm sure. The zoning area map just kind of shows it zoomed out. You can see these projects have MF6, which is what we've applied for, and this is a little more zoomed in. Again, the SF3 on the 2 residential lots. And then the FLUM, as Maureen has already pointed out, is multifamily on the existing southern tract, southern lot, and then the 2 lots are single family. A little more zoomed out view of the Imagine Austin corridors and centers. There's a couple of different this is kind of what the City of Austin has set for their guideposts as to where to direct growth. For example, is kind of near these centers and along these corridors. I think it's probably about, if I remember correctly, about 1/3 of a mile to this Lamar corridor, and probably the same. It pretty much is equidistant between these 2 Imagine Austin corridors. Again, a quick walk down these sidewalks to the Imagine Austin corridors and bus stops, either down Grover or over to the east. So I think of this site and this general area as a pretty transit rich. And I think the city planners consider this to be a fairly transit rich area. Again, kind of a nice bike routes here, sidewalks right all the way to the Lamar, for example. And then this is just a view of the Project Connect. When it gets extended up into this area in the future, there's something that is called the 10-minute walk shed and 2-minute bike shed. And this project is within that particular distance, which is a positive thing from a planning standpoint and city planners perspective. And here is my contact information, and this is my last slide, and we'll kind of wrap it up and perhaps pass it off to Mark and Maureen to field any questions. But again, I just want to thank everybody for being here and for taking the opportunity to provide your input. And we certainly, like I said, view this as the beginning of a ongoing dialogue that'll happen most likely until the first quarter of next year, and we look forward to that continued dialogue.
Thank you, David. So now is the attendees' opportunity to ask questions of David or the property owners. So if you would raise your hand or put it in the chat, but we can begin to have that question. But first, there are two people on the phone. One of the person's phone number ends in 9355. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you so much. I live in the neighborhood, obviously, and I do use the public transportation system here. So those are great qualities about life, as they've mentioned. But that being said, a lot of what I heard pertained to the creation of a neighborhood without really accounting for the high school. All of the roads that you referred to, aside from the main corridors, are 2-lane roads that currently allow parking, some of which do and some of which don't have sidewalks. And I know for Lamar Middle School, there was a fatality over there recently. There's walking fatalities occasionally between Woodrow and Koenig for, decades. So I'm curious, how do you anticipate being able to compensate the neighborhood, particularly the high school, with this sort of increase in two-way road traffic?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And again, part of what we're here to do is get the kind of feedback that you're providing. And I'll go ahead and just leave this presentation up if that's okay with everybody. One thing I'll mention, offer to you just by way of information, is that the McCallum High School, as everybody knows, is just to the east of Woodrow. And I was involved with this Dart Bowl redevelopment project. And I know, for example, in coordination and collaboration with the neighborhood association, that project, at the request of the neighborhood association, is dedicating a sidewalk crossing, a pedestrian, crossing across Woodrow, and that's under site plan review now. And so there'll be pedestrian lights, beacons, flashing beacons, rapid flashing beacons is what it's called. And my recollection too is that there's a parkland trail that'll be dedicated in connection with that project. This project, is early in the process, and so I don't have any of those kind of details at this early stage of this process. But certainly, your kind of input is the kind of input that we're taking notes, and we'll kind of keep studying the site and keep thinking about things that can address issues that are raised on this call.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions before I go into the next phone call?
No, thank you.
Okay, so with the individual whose phone number ends in 6340, do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, yes, this is Natalie. I live on Grover Avenue. I'm just a few blocks away from the site that is planning to be rezoned. My question for you is, you mentioned that the two properties in question are at the end of their useful life. I actually happen to own a home that was built in 1949 on Grover Avenue. So I'm curious if you could explain a little bit more detail why you think those properties are at the end of their useful life. Because from the outside and from some of the tenant stories that I've heard that live at the Brentwood condominiums, it sounds like they are great places to use.
Thank you again for calling in. I frankly couldn't hear most of what you asked, but I think you were asking some sort of further, I guess, rationale for the zoning case. And I would just say that, and that some sort of additional statement in addition to the age of the structures. And I would just say that, in general, that fairly old structures like this throughout the city, particularly given the fact that the city is facing a housing crisis, that, tracks like this that maybe are a little bit older, you're seeing folks kind of plan for redevelopment, for hopefully bringing in a little more number of housing units and homes for neighbors for this particular area. And that's one of the rationales for the zoning case as well. Again, I think most people in the business of what I do, at least, would agree that structures built in 1950 and 1960 are kind of reaching the end of their life, and the maintenance costs kind of generally start to skyrocket. So that's kind of, from a business standpoint, why you see that owners at this particular juncture in the life of structures start to look at things like rezoning.
I'm just going to go down the list and ask the people have questions. So, Bill Spiesman, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, hi. I'm Bill Spiesman. I'm
Spiesman,
president of the
sorry.
Brentwood neighborhood. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm president of the Brentwood Neighborhood Association, as well as representative here on this call for the neighborhood contact team. And I have a couple of questions. And the first one has to do with parking, and if they have any kind of a plan currently with where parking would be and what roads it would come out on. I mean, as you know, David, we coordinated with you with the property that's being developed at the Dart Bowl to try and limit traffic on Roosevelt because of the fact that it's a small road with only one access point, and there's already a new, a remodeled apartment building down near the end of Roosevelt. And so my first question is, what is the parking plan?
Yeah, as you know, Bill, at this early stage, it's kind of, for those others who may be on the call that aren't as familiar, there's something that the city refers to as the order process. And there's the zoning case, then subdivision, and then site plan. And we're at the zoning case standpoint, where what is before the planning commission and city council is whether to go, for example, from single family to multifamily. And then once that zoning case is wrapped up, then we'll do the site planning processes, where you have your architects draw up and civil engineers submit the full-blown plans for the site plan. And at this juncture, we don't have all the details of what the project ultimately is going to look like. But I would think that the parking garage standpoint of it will look very similar to what you see the adjacent multifamily projects that are either just recently or under construction, recently been construction or under construction. And with respect to what access points, what roadways, this may have access and exit access to. We haven't determined that right now, but I'm taking notes, and certainly that's. I hear you. I think I hear you saying correctly. I hear correctly that you're saying that the neighborhood would prefer for this project not have access to Roosevelt, and I've got that written down, and we'll continue to study it and see if we can nail that down as we move forward through the process.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. And also, as you know, as we've had other discussions about all the traffic on Houston Avenue, with respect to another property that you're representing, that Houston is already taxed with, I think the most recent counts is it's operating at about 300% of what is considered the maximum number of trips per day, largely because the high school is there, as well as the fact that a lot of the exits from this part of the neighborhood onto arterials are difficult. The road pattern, as you can see here, is not north-south. It's kind of skewed, and further to the west of this property, the roadway the pattern shifts about 45 degrees, but that makes getting onto those roads very difficult. So that's always a concern. I have another question. I don't know if you want to cycle back to me with that, though. If Maureen, if you want other people to have some input first or not.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just go, to the next person on my list here, then I'll come back to you after we go through a round of questions. Okay.
Okay.
Would Chris, you have any questions or comments for David or the property owners? No? Okay. What about David and Manuel? Do you have any questions
Yes.
or comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is David speaking.
David, sorry.
Yeah, I've got a few questions for you. First of all, I wanted to comment on the point about the age of structures and just the point about being kind of end of life. And so, is there a reason why though the rezoning can't just remain in say a similar kind of a designation as it currently is? So rather than going to higher density, it could remain in a similar density and still allow for, say, renovation of the site. That's just one question I have. I'm not sure that you have to make the jump to higher density. I want to echo the points that have been made previously about parking and traffic patterns on both Grover and Houston. We live right on the corner of Grover and Houston on the southeast corner. And so we're very familiar with these traffic patterns. And when school is in session in McAllen High School, there's a lot of traffic. It's hard to get kind of in and out of the space, which poses some challenges if there were an emergency. If someone is just kind of waiting in traffic because they have to go from point A to point B, it's not a big deal. But if you have an emergency, every day in the morning and in the evening, you have these backed up traffic because McAllen is a high school. You have lots of students who park on these streets, including our street on Grover. They park all the way down to halfway between Grover and North Loop. And of course, they park on Houston between Grover and Roosevelt, and that poses its own challenges because what used to be a 2-lane road turns into essentially a 1-lane road with really tough traffic situations. So I guess the question or the comment that I have really has to do about increasing the density. As we know, we already have the new dart bowl, the old dart bowl space that is being renovated into higher density, living spaces. The old Honda dealership that was on the corner that now is already more high density. So it's really the question of how much can this small area support. And so I want to be convinced that we can support it. With the right kinds of with the forethought to consider all these issues, because really there's a kind of, we've already hit our max here as was mentioned earlier. Roosevelt is already at 300% of max trips, so we have to think about these things. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot stated. I think I'll respond, and my best way to respond is that part of the issue with the existing zoning is that there's something called minimum net side area requirements. It's kind of as a lot of people may know, the city of Austin's saddled with a 40-year-old land development code from 1984, and it's got a lot of these kind of quirks that basically limit what can be redeveloped on the site. And that minimum net side area basically is a development standard that would hinder the ability to redevelop the tract. And so MF6, for example, which is what we're rezoning to, one of the key reasons we're doing that is to eliminate that minimum net side area, which gives your architects a little more flexibility to design the site. MF6, for example, authorizes a greater height than what we're going to be able to build on this site due to compatibility restrictions. The single family house that it sounds like you live in is going to restrict as the compatibility will trigger compatibility regulations and will restrict the maximum height that this project can get. So I'd say that the rezoning, the reason we're taking it to a different zoning category is not to build out the building envelope is what people call it. That is what MF6 allows, but rather primarily to eliminate that minimum net side area. And as we move forward and have more dialogue with the neighborhood with association, there are ways we can kind of dial down on what the maximum height is, for example. And this, in terms of the traffic and safety and sort of things like that, we hear you and we understand that there are some challenges with particularly the school parking that happens around that area, the cars, excuse me, that get parked on the streets. Again, at time of site plan, the traffic issues, some of the safety issues, watershed, impervious cover. There are multiple different departments of the city of Austin that will review and ensure that this complies and that there are improvements that are done that address things like traffic. And there's something also called street impact fees that this project will have to pay when it gets redeveloped. That'll go directly towards adjacent street improvements. All that'll be done again at time of site plan. And I can appreciate that the responses from that a lot of these issues will be addressed at time of site plan. May not be all that the most robust and what you're expecting in terms of a response, but that's basically how a lot of how the process works. And then I'll just close by reiterating again that this is what I and others consider to be a pretty transit-rich area with the Project Connect station coming and Metro Rapid bus routes within walking distance. And that's kind of where people look for, a little more dense residential development than what, for example, may have been developed in 1950, 1960.
Thank you, David. Next person on my list would be Henry. Do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none. Next person on my list is Mimi. Do you have any questions or comments for David or the property owners? You can unmute if you, okay. Next person on my list is Paul Cook. Paul, if you would unmute and ask your question or comment if you have one.
Yeah, just I've heard clearly that there's a lot we don't know at this point. But Mr. Hartman, in your experience, not necessarily promising on this specific case, but when a property like this is in site planning, and you're talking about, I think you said road use fees or so forth, is it typical for the city of Austin to then undertake infrastructure refinements such as, say, widening Grover Avenue or widening available streets, certainly changing signage so that parking is managed? What has been your experience with that in other properties, not necessarily specific to this one, because I know you can't say, don't know. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any specific answers, specific roadway improvements based on other projects. I can certainly ask our civil engineers to study it and see, weigh in with their input. I will just again say that I'm aware, or I know that the city passed an ordinance last year that kind of is a new way to address transportation and different roadway improvements. And that's called, and they'll collect what's called street impact fees. And those street impact fees will go to area improvements. And I just don't know the answer to your question, but I can certainly ask our civil engineer and get back to you.
Thank you very much. Good answer. Thank you.
Actually, from my experience, I've been with the city for 23 years. I have never seen too many existing roadways widen because the cost to condemn the property on either side would be just very prohibitive. That's been what I've been told, and because the sidewalks often go right up to the property line, so it makes it kind of hard to extend it further. Next is Steve B. is your property owner, right, David?
Correct. Yeah, thanks. You can
And
pass.
Okay, and the last person on my list is Trevor. Do you have a question or comment? If you do, please unmute and ask your question
Trevor's
or
on
make
my
a
team.
comment.
Trevor's
Trevor
on
is as well.
my team. Yeah.
Okay, would the person a few minutes ago who just logged on with their phone, if they're still here, do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm going to go back to Bill. So you had some more questions or comments. Here's your opportunity.
Yeah. Another question that I had, David, is if there has to be parkland. I don't see necessarily a lot of parkland dedication that's available on the property here, but is that a factor on this development?
Yeah, Bill, as you know, we'll have to comply with the parkland dedication ordinance again at time of site plan. And there'll either be possibly fee in lieu or some sort of on-site parkland dedication or some sort of trail. I don't know what's been done on this tract yet, but my guess is just eyeballing it, with an on-site park at the Pearl and the trail connectivity on the Dart Bowl that I've mentioned on this call. I'm not sure, and as you alluded to already, there's not much room on this site for an on-site park of any meaningful manner. So my sense is this may not have that much in the way of on-site parkland dedication.
Also like to add something to that, David. This past legislative session, the House and the Senate forwarded a bill to the governor strictly limiting parkland dedication. I think it's 1521 Senate bill or House Bill 1521, and the governor did sign it. It goes into effect the 1st of September, I believe. So there is that, which could be affecting future parkland dedication across the state. So just FYI, there is that. Any other questions, Bill?
One sort of comment as representing the neighborhood plan contact team is that the SF3 property on the north end of this development, we would still like to see something different there, and in particular, higher density is probably fine and something that's going to happen. But we'd like to keep it as SF single family property. There's 2 units there now. I don't remember what the size is and how much you could develop under SF4 or a higher single family use. But our interest would be in trying to maintain single family zoning for that, some category of single family zoning for those properties, which would I think would then have to be developed separately as some additional additional condos or whatever that would go in there, but not something as large as the as you mentioned, expected roughly 45-foot tall building for the rest of the property down there. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's the interest of the neighborhood plan contact team.
So thanks for that comment. I'd like to get some clarification just to make sure I understand it. So immediately to the north is to those two lots is MF zoning, and then immediately to the west is MF zoning, and directly across, if we were to look at an aerial, directly across from those is a condo that project. So, but your interest is in just some smaller.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I realize that there's been, a slow buildup of multifamily zoning along that street. But a number of the residents in our meeting with the contact team and also with the neighborhood association were really interested in trying to save that, that one lot that kind of falls, falls between a couple of multifamily zone properties. But if you go further in any direction, there's still single family properties. And so, a potentially higher density single family zoning there would be in something that the neighborhood association and the contact team are likely to support. And just having another 30-foot or 50-foot bleb sticking out of the side of a 45-foot building is not going to be as attractive.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification. I've got my notes.
Okay.
David, if you would unmute and ask your question.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Just as we were speaking, I realized that I had another question, and it has to do with again I guess the number of units. If I heard correctly, the proposed structures would be 190 units. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's on the zoning application. You have to put a number on it, and it's kind of again, it's rough calc, kind of back of the envelope, because people don't do site planning and architectural renderings at this time. But on the zoning application, it's actually 195 units.
Got it, 195. And what do you happen to know what the current number of units in the space is? I mean, outside of those two single family homes.
Yeah, there's 49 multifamily and then two rent homes.
49. So we're essentially increasing it fourfold. Yeah, I guess I go back to my same concerns about increasing the density with the current traffic patterns. We know currently what the traffic patterns are after the building of I always forget the name of the place that took over the Honda dealership. The Pearl. That's right. And in fact, I don't think that the traffic patterns changed a whole lot, to be completely honest. It could be that lots of people are working from home. Who knows? But I didn't notice a huge increase in traffic patterns after the Pearl came in. But we do have the new property that will be coming online next year, where Dart Bowl was, and of course this, potentially down the line. So again, just concern about traffic patterns and congestion, especially in, say, emergency situations. Yeah.
And I would add, David, that David, that there's also a new development that's going to be going in on the east, I guess, traveling east on Houston, near where the Monkey's Nest coffee shop is. There's another large project going in there, and although we had tried to get at planning, at the Planning Commission, we had tried to get some support for providing access on that property out onto Burnett Road. They didn't do that. And so we may end up having that traffic, a lot of that traffic coming through Houston Avenue as well. So there's numerous new properties that are coming up that are going to impact, probably impact the traffic on Houston.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Bill. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to go back down my list and see if anyone else has questions, starting with those folks on the phone with the individual with 9355. Do you have any questions for David or the property owner?
I do. I'm curious. So based on all of the wonderful information that the people who live around the area have provided, throughout the conversation, it's really clear that the ability for our current infrastructure in terms of roadways, in terms of sidewalks, in terms of the simple average square footage that we have in the area to drive on the road isn't going to be able to sustain our current standing quite a marked amount. So why would it be safe and in the city's best interest to increase the density when we know that it's already not meeting the citizens' needs as is?
My response is that, we're taking good notes, and we'll certainly talk amongst ourselves of the input that we received today amongst ourselves as a project team. And then I think you're very, very much within your prerogative, within your rights to provide the kind of input you provided today to the policymakers, the Planning Commission, whenever it is they bring up the case. And then at the City Council, there'll be, again, multiple public hearing opportunities for everybody to weigh in and to provide their input.
Thank you. The next person, Chris, you didn't have a question, comment last time. Do you have one now? Okay. Henry, do you have a question or comment? No? Okay. Okay. And then Mimi, do you have a question and comment? No. And last but not least, Paul Cook, do you have a question or comment for David?
Yeah.
No.
So,
okay. Well, you do.
Trying to jump for the mute button. No, well, I think that the neighborhood is evolving, and I think the pressure on it is why we're here ourselves. It's a nice place to be. It looks like it's going to increase in its availability to transit and to other resources. I mean, I think we've been enjoying the new stores and things that have moved into the area over the last decade or so. So, what we're attracted to is what other people are attracted to. I think the big question is, how do we integrate this new, larger group of people into what we have in existence? And that, I think, is going to rely on the site plan. But I think it's inevitable that we're going to see increased density because, we just can't wait. I mean, just look in terms of houses. My wife and I walk around the block. Any older house that goes on sale, we call it a scraper, and the next thing you know, we've got a duplex in there or a much larger house. But this is what's going to happen. I'm done. Sorry, it wasn't a question so much as a statement.
Well, thank you for your statement. So meeting doesn't have to extend to the time allotted for it. So does anybody else have any questions or comments? It looks like we're kind of running down a little bit. If you do, here's your opportunity. If not, Maureen, can you get your contact information and talk about next steps?
Yes, I didn't know that. So here is my contact information, and then Dana Moses is the zoning planner. So like I said earlier, I don't know which postponement date, we will postpone from the August 8th Planning Commission date. You can reach out to me for follow-up, or you can listen to the August 8th Planning Commission hearing to find out that date. But either way, once we finalize that postponement date and we feel confident that the cases will move forward for Planning Commission action, I'll reach out to the Brentwood Planning Contact Team to seek their letter of recommendation, and anybody who wants to provide any recommendation to be included in staff case report, you can submit that as well. You can send it now, or you can send it later once we find out the postponement date. But either way, here's my contact information for any follow-up that you might have.
Okay. And since you don't have a council date in mind, I said, like David said, several months. So, David, do you have any final closing comments before we end tonight's meeting?
No, just really thanks to you and Maureen for all your efforts coordinating, and then of course even more so, thanks to those who took time to provide input. We've certainly got some good notes, and look forward to our continued dialogue.
Well, thank you, and I echo David's comments that we really appreciate it when people come and provide this kind of input. So I guess that's the end of the meeting. Unless anybody else, has anything left to say. Go ahead.
I just wanted
Bill.
to say thanks, David. We always appreciate the sincerity that you come to the table with when we're negotiating, when I'm negotiating on behalf of the neighborhood. We appreciate that.
You
Don't
bet,
always
Bill.
see that, so we appreciate that from you.
Yeah, always good to see you.
Hey, well, folks, thank you for coming out, and we can now get back to our lives and maybe have dinner. So thank you again for coming out, and I'm going to stop the recording now.